I'm with Paul Silva. Now, Paul Silva is the guru of mentorship in Western Massachusetts and now growing around the world. So welcome, Paul. Thank you very much for joining me. And I'm looking forward to hearing your continued wisdom about mentorship in the entire field of how you mentor entrepreneurs. Thanks for joining me.
It is always a delight to be with you, my friend.
So, Paul, so you started Valley Venture Mentors many years ago. Like, tell me about your philosophy. And that's a mentorship program throughout Western Massachusetts. We're talking to people all over the world with a specific focus on Macedonia, which is not all important to what I'm going to ask you about. But tell me, what does mentorship, entrepreneurial mentorship, mean to you?
Mentorship is about transferring the most important resource that entrepreneurs can't have, which is experience, right? We can learn some basic things in books, maybe in classes. We can have our gut knowledge because we've been in an industry or we've been facing a problem, but there's an infinite number of aspects of our business that we are not experts on. And we can either go up the learning curve the hard way, or we can be mentored by someone who's already been there, got the scars to prove it, and they can show us, look, I don't know how to help you succeed, but I can tell you these 5 things are going to kill you tomorrow. Don't do those things. Yeah. And just, if that's all a mentor does, that will be life-saving for most entrepreneurs. And sometimes they can go far above and beyond that and point entrepreneurs even in good directions. But just steering clear of company-killing ideas is a really good thing.
So since this is all about preparing people to be mentors, I'm going to start actually where I should probably go to the end, but I'm going to do the beginning. What advice do you have to someone who's about to become a mentor for an early stage entrepreneur?
So I'd say the most important advice for any mentor is to be very cognizant of what you are an expert about and what you are not an expert about. I'll exaggerate to make a point. You know, if you are a brain surgeon, then I trust you to, cut my brain and get the tumor out. I don't care what you think about stock picks or about what my marketing strategy should be, unless you happen to also be a world-class, marketer or something. So we need to know what we're good at and not. And when we talk to an entrepreneur, we need to have the humility when they ask, they will come to us and assume that we know everything because we have gray hair or less hair, and that we've been there and done that. And we have to be able to say, look, I actually don't know how to do that. This is what I do know. But I know someone who does know that. So always be ready to bring in the person that is the best person you know to help the entrepreneur if they're ready for advice, if it's ready to use that political capital, and don't give advice on things that you actually don't understand.
So let's just say you are establishing a mentor relationship with this entrepreneur. What does that first conversation look like? What do you think is the best way to start a conversation about being their mentor?
Oh, interesting. So we always cheated at Valley Venture Mentors by creating an artificial situation, make it easier for the entrepreneurs and the mentors. So if possible, try to create that situation by just having the entrepreneur give you their pitch and walk you through their business, because then you can use the business as an excuse to start asking questions that really are going to get to the heart of it. Because why are we mentoring an entrepreneur? Right? Mentoring is not a profitable activity from a straight up financial perspective. It is profitable in a warmth and fuzz, in a feeling good, in that we were mentored and we want to pay it forward to other people. And this is a great way to do it. But to do that, you need to find the right match. So you need to find an entrepreneur that's working on a problem that you care about, but also that has a personality that's going to match with you, that has values that align with you. And so I find it's really important just to understand the character of an entrepreneur by asking them about their business and what they have done to do the business. And probably one of the things you should definitely be investigating around is how dedicated is the entrepreneur. Now, someone who's just come up with an idea should not be ready to quit their day job and give up everything just because they had an idea. But given the stage of development that they're at, they should be willing to commit the right amount of work, and you should be able to give them a little homework and not do more work with them until they've shown a willingness to do something on their end. Sorry, go ahead.
Interesting. Like you're talking about, so earning the right to be mentored is a very interesting concept. Yeah, that's interesting. Like so this homework thing, right? So how much do you push people versus waiting for them to sort of earn it by doing the work you ask them to do and following up?
So there's the hard school and the soft school. And I am a proponent of the soft school in certain situations. So let me explain the two. And I've been very blessed. Everything I'm telling you is stuff I learned from my mentors. So one of my best mentors is a hard mentor. So I'd meet with him. He would give me his advice and he'd give me homework. And he'd say, when you do that, call me back. And he would not contact me. If I didn't do the homework, I didn't have the right to follow up with him. If I wrote him, he'd say, that's great. Did you do the thing? If I didn't do the thing, I needed to have a good reason why I didn't do the thing. Otherwise, he'd say, oh, no problem. It won't make sense for us to meet until you do the thing. It was his polite way of saying, go do the homework. Because we all know people don't appreciate what you don't pay for. And if mentoring is free, the mentee is paying, but they have to pay with their time and their sincerity. And so that was a good test. Now, the caveat to that is that particularly if you're working with groups that are not used to being mentored or are unfamiliar with the cultural norms around this, then they might not know that that's the expectation. This is particularly true in any population that has not had a chance to disproportionately be an entrepreneur. So for them, I tell them this is the homework and I'm explicit. Look, I would be delighted to continue to help you. And when you complete this, this is when you should follow up with me. Or if in trying to complete it, you run into a roadblock and you're really stuck, that's also a good reason to reach out to me. But if it's not a priority, there's other things in your life, no worries. Focus on those things. And when it's a priority, do it. And then you can contact me. So by being explicit as much as possible, instead of assuming that they know the rules, most first-time entrepreneurs, again, especially from disadvantaged groups, do not know the rules. And therefore they get shut out of the system for those reasons.
So some entrepreneurs, early stage, think they don't need a mentor. Like, yeah, I'm smart. I went to college. I got my degree. Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, what would you say to someone like that?
What I have learned to say is, that's great. Congratulations. I hope you're very successful, because I have found I cannot talk them out of it. Yeah. If they're that confident, I might say, it sounds great. You said you're going to get to 10 million in revenue this year. That's fantastic. If you discover there's some trouble along the way, feel free to drop me a line, because I'm always okay with someone learning that they were hubristic and a fool and coming back. All of us were idiots. Some of us stay idiots our whole lives. Some of us realize that we're idiots and learn how to be grown-ups. And so I want to give them the grace to come back.
You talked about personality match, but I want to ask you, what do you think is sort of some personality traits that a good mentor has?
A great mentor, as a general rule, is fairly Socratic in their approach, in that it's less about telling the entrepreneur the answers to the questions than it is giving them the right questions. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is that as smart as we are as experienced mentors, we're not as in it as the entrepreneur is in the specifics of their business. So things that we are sure are true, 90% chance we're right, but there's a 10% chance that there's something specific about their situation that's different. And so if we can equip them with the questions to analyze the situation and come to the same conclusion, then A, they will come to the right conclusion. B, they've got a tool that they can keep using as opposed to always calling me to get the answer. We want to teach them how to fish. And so by giving them the right questions, you empower them to answer. And then lastly, probably the most important thing is, anyone who's a parent knows our children don't believe stuff we tell them. Humans don't believe things that are told to them on average. We believe things that we learn ourselves. So if you can not tell them the answer, but show them how to learn the answer themselves, they will believe it at their core, as opposed to
a mentor, an inexperienced mentor might tell you, well, I know all the answers, so why don't I just like meet with them and they tell me what's going on, and I'm like, here's what you need to do. Like this balance between leveraging my expertise and leveraging my curiosity. How do those fit together in building a mentorship sort of portfolio for myself?
Sure. And to be fair, I made it sound too extreme, right? It's not that we never give advice. It's a balance. And entrepreneurs want us to be directive, like do this, this, and this. And so I am fine with being directive and giving an entrepreneur certain answers, but only if I've made sure to wrap it in the right framing, try to get them to come to the right conclusion. So like when I help someone with a pitch deck that they're going to give to investors, first I explain, all right, so when you gave this slide, these are the problems it caused for me. How might you change that? If you were to do it as a story, what might it look like? And then they say it and I say, oh, okay. And then I pull up a slide and I start typing what they've said when they say the right answer. And if they don't say the right answer, I keep asking them some more questions. So I'm being directive and telling them what to do, but eventually it's their answers on the page and they're more likely to believe it.
Yeah, so you're the author of the term lovingly critical. What does that really mean? Tell me what that really means, and is it really accurate as to what people should be doing?
I don't know. It's accurate for what I do. And a lot of people misunderstand it. It's just another way, a rebranding of constructive criticism. I just found that constructive criticism, when I had a room of 100 mentors, and I used to say be constructively critical, a lot of them were a bit harsh because they figured, well, I'm telling them the truth, and that will help them be better, therefore it's constructive. And one thing we learned is lovingly critical really is the same thing, but the tone is what the difference is. So we say, you tell them if there's something wrong, but you're not a jerk about it. So you don't say, this company is doomed to failure. You say, gee, it looks like your revenue is going to be 1/10 of your costs. Do you see that as a problem, or how might you get around that? And then that can lead to an interesting conversation. It might educate you on something that you didn't know, or again, get the entrepreneur to connect the dots. And if you're reminding yourself that it's not my job to show the entrepreneur that I'm awesome. It's not about me. It's that I love entrepreneurs. They're the ones that create prosperity and jobs. And if I can help this person follow their dream, they're going to create good in the world. And so I want to come from that mindset when I give the advice. And it just takes it and puts the right tinge on it so that the entrepreneurs feel like you're there for them. You can give them hard stuff. I've had plenty of entrepreneurs walk out of my meetings like, well, 1% of my pitch was reusable. But they didn't feel like a piece of crap. They felt bad that only 1% was usable, but at no point did I make them feel like a worthless human being. They walked out with, I know exactly what I need to do. I'm armed with the right things.
Yeah, so, you managed a mentorship program for years, and did you ever have to fire someone? This is really hard, firing a volunteer. Have you ever had to fire someone who's just a horrifyingly critical, or something else that they did was just awful? Have you ever done that?
So you're throwing me a softball. I did get punched once. So I fired, in working with about 3,000 volunteers over the course of those years, I fired about 3 or 4 people, so 0.1%. And I gave warnings to a couple times that many, not 10 times that many, which sounds like a lot, but then you realize it's such a tiny fraction of the total number of people. So the vast majority of people, if you're clear in communicating up front and model what you're doing, and you make sure that the first 10 or 20 people in your mentor community all get it and believe it, you form the seed of a healthy community. Then as you add people, they will get it and they will stick. And the occasional reminder of people that have gone off the trail, almost all of them either stopped coming or they realize, oh, I didn't mean to be a jerk. I was a jerk, but I didn't mean to be. I will stop doing that bad behavior.
What were they doing? So I know 3 out of thousands is not that many, but what were these people doing that got Mr. Lovingly Critical to push them off the ship here? Like, what were they doing?
Yeah, so one company broke our rule about forming a relationship with a company and not disclosing it. We're always fine with mentors having a relationship with a company. After all, if there was an investor and they wanted to fund one of our companies, that's great. We just need to be transparent about it and change the way that they, mentor them, because now they shouldn't be involved in certain conversations. So there was one entrepreneur who formed a relationship and, quite frankly, wrote up the legalese in a way that was screwing the entrepreneur. And then we found out about it after the fact and were able to extricate them out of that legal arrangement. There was another entrepreneur who blatantly started copying our entrepreneur. Wow. This mentor started copying our entrepreneur. Luckily, most of the time when people copy you, they're idiots. So it doesn't matter that they copy you. Even though he was rich and connected, he was still inept when compared to our broke entrepreneur. But he took their stuff, and in no time, we started seeing things on his website that might as well have been a carbon copy. Wow. So he at least shouldn't have been mentoring the entrepreneurs if it was his content and was just convergent evolution. He should have been like, oh, I'm in a very similar business, so I'm going to stay over here. But he didn't. He was there meeting with them, going over all the details, and then not disclosing. So those kinds of dishonest things are what would cause us to fire somebody, because
Yeah.
we have very simple rules: don't solicit, and don't be an asshole.
Yeah. So in terms of so let's flip let's flip the switch a little bit. And now you're being mentored, and I'm sure you've had people who have mentored you over the years. So tell me about how that works and when it really worked for you and when it didn't work for you.
As a mentee, what were the
Yeah.
best
Yeah.
on
As a
my end?
mentee.
So, well, it won't be shocking that I've tried to build my mentoring organizations based on the best experiences that I had, and then learning from doing it at scale. So my best mentors were the ones, as a matter of fact, lovingly critical, though the word wasn't used by one of my mentors, Eddie Binder. He is the absolute embodiment of it. He is better at it than me. Every single time I've met with the man, I've walked away knowing that I was an idiot and could basically prove it mathematically. But he never said it, never made me feel bad. He just sweetly said, "Oh, you're doing this, and have you thought about it this way?" And I'm like, I already know that, but I screwed it up anyway. But he never made me feel bad. So those people modeled that, were incredibly generous of their time, which, it's very hard to be because we're all busy. We all have lots of things in our life, but somehow the best mentors find a way to squeeze you in without sacrificing their families. But they find a way to squeeze you in when you need it most, and giving me the targeted feedback that I needed. And they would tell me when I was really doing it wrong, which was so important, because there's been a number of times when I was heading off a cliff, but I was very happy about it. And people were not afraid to tell me, like, you might not want to hear this, but I'm afraid that this will happen if you go in that direction. And these are some ways you can figure that out.
Do you have any
It's
examples
really,
of time when you pivoted your business based on some mentor feedback or idea?
oh God, so many times. Well, let's pick something that's a little more recent, so I'm not as foggy on it. My angel investor group that I run. All right, so that's a mature business, been around 17 years, and a year ago it was shrinking for almost the first time in its history, and shrinking precipitously. It should be dead right now. And I was at a loss. I'd been running this thing for most of its 17-year history, and I was running it better than I'd ever run it before, but it was dying. And so I did what I've learned to do. When I'm in trouble, I call my mentors. And then they whacked me upside the head, and they lovingly said, "Gee, Paul, you teach entrepreneurship. What would you tell your students to do in this situation? It sounds like has your customer base changed?" Well, I suppose, yeah. Do they do this? Do they do that? Yeah, now that you mention it, my customers are very different now than they were 17 years ago when the group was founded. Oh, and what happens when a customer base changes, Paul? You should probably change your product. Oh, how might you change your product? I don't know, but I'll go ask my customers. That sounds like a good idea, Paul. Let me know how that goes. And so then I called my customers and conducted customer discovery, got some pattern matching, went back to the mentors. Well, sure enough, you're right. Customers were like this, and now my customers are like this. So I'm thinking of moving in this other direction, but it's a big change. And like, so how can you test if that's a good idea? Right, I could test this idea. All right, I'm gonna frame it. I'm gonna call back a couple of the key people that I've already lost. I'm not gonna get back okay. So they, in just a few phone calls, showed me how to see what was wrong, how to validate if my new solution would work. And then I was able to roll out the solution. And now the group is growing at the fastest rate it's ever grown and investing at the fastest rate it's ever invested.
That's great. I call that eat your own dog food. It's like you kind of like, oh yeah, I would interview people like that's sort of like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So yeah, it's always good to have that sounding board of someone saying to do it. Do what you would tell someone else to do. It's like be your own consultant, as I am a consultant. Hey, one other thing. I've been clearly the COVID world has required us to pivot in many ways. How has mentoring changed when we went from face-to-face sitting at Starbucks to face-to-face sitting on a Zoom screen? Have you noticed in your mentorship that it's changed? It's gotten better? It's gotten worse? Like, what's the pivot we all need to do when we do things remotely? Because let's face it, this is going to be like this minimum 7-8 months, maybe more like a year and a half. So what are you thinking there?
So not surprisingly, what I've seen has been positives and negatives. The one-on-one mentoring has gotten better. It's gotten better because it's easier to get a mentor meeting because you don't have to drive to Boston or somewhere. So it's just so convenient for people to click a link and be on a call to help you that people are able to, and everyone just always assumed before that you had to be in person. That was the cultural norm. And so because that's costly, that would really decrease how much mentoring you could get. And while I miss seeing you in 3D, and it is better in 3D without a doubt, there's enough, 90-something% of the value is still captured via Zoom that, given the lack of transition travel costs, that's been a big plus. The place where it hurts is that there isn't really a good solution for replicating what we had at VVM, which was 100 mentors in a room, a couple startups pitching, and the ability to seamlessly just sort of walk to this crowd of people and engage in a conference. That kind of networking that's organic isn't happening online. I've experimented with a few platforms. I haven't found anything that does a great job of it. The networking that I do facilitate in my angel group, whatnot, it's okay, but it is not the same thing. It's actually better for introverts because they can be sort of forced into a room and everyone knows what's supposed to happen, as opposed to, I don't know any of the people, I'm not a part of the clique. But for everybody else, it's a real problem. So I'm hoping the technology catches up to give us all more abilities to facilitate networking because that serendipitous discovery is not what's happening now.
Yeah. So, and how, if you're, I've been hearing as I talk to people about this whole idea about mentorship, this tension between organic finding a mentor or you meeting people and having evolve versus you're in a program, they're assigned to you. Like, how does that work? Like, what do you think, if I was an entrepreneur and I would need to find a mentor, or I want mentor or mentors, how do I vet them for myself to make sure I've got the right person and the right fit for me?
Yeah, so that's great. A lot of programs will assign you mentors, and in many cases they sort of have to by the nature of their structure. In which case, you don't have a lot of control. So being able to start assessing mentors is important, and extra important if you're in a program where you've been assigned the mentors and you are stuck with them, good or bad, for the rest of the program. Then you need to be able to figure out how to manage. You always need to know how to manage employees, board members, mentors. This is just a general life skill to have. And so what you want to do is you want to be engaging in a conversation with your mentor about their passions and about their area of expertise. Most humans are happy to ramble on about themselves. So if you can ask them about their favorite successes in life, the hardest challenges they overcame to get them to where they are in their business career, you will start to notice if they're a brain surgeon giving digital marketing advice, or if they're a digital marketing expert giving digital marketing advice. So A, assess what their expertise is. B, notice if they're giving you advice inside or outside of that area, and then weight the advice accordingly. Because every entrepreneur gets advice from different mentors, and the mentors will inevitably disagree. And that's one of the greatest, you and I both know this all the time. Entrepreneurs like, who do I listen to? Well, first order approximation, listen to the person who's a pro at that particular topic. And it might be that you're listening to Stephen for one topic and Paul on a different topic. The entrepreneur has to be smart enough to figure out which areas we're pros at if we're not smart enough to shut up when we're not supposed to be talking about something, which a lot of us aren't. Or we might not coach it appropriately for the entrepreneur to figure out. And so I would be assessing what they're good at, trying to focus listening, and steer conversations away from areas that they're not good at, because they love to have, they're like, oh, look, I know your time's so precious. And I know your superpower is on this. So I really love to get more of your help on, oh yes, my superpower is on that. Yes, ask me more about my superpower. So those are some good soft ways to try to use your time with the mentors better.
So you're basically saying that one mentor is not enough. You need to have multiple based on the kind of knowledge you need to gain.
Unless anyone knows the all-knowing, omniscient person, right? That's the problem. That any business has a nearly infinite amount of knowledge it needs to acquire in order to be successful. So the entrepreneur should be looking at, a question you didn't ask, Susan, but sorry, just jumped in my head. Every entrepreneur should be, writing on a whiteboard or something, what my biggest risk is, the thing most likely to kill my company right now, and what my next couple milestones are, and then go out and find mentors that know how to solve that problem. Don't say, well, I need an infinite number of mentors, because you'll choke on it. You can't take all the advice. Say like, well, the thing most likely to kill me right now is cash flow. So I need to go find people that really can help me figure out how to cut my costs. Okay, great. That's all you should be focusing on, getting those people. And when cash flow isn't your problem anymore, thank them. Don't schedule another meeting with them for a while. Just send them a love note once a month or once a quarter about how you're progressing and how thankful you are for them. But be focusing on talking to the pitch coach so you can raise some money from investors or whatever the next big challenge point for you is.
Yeah. So what question didn't I ask you that I should have, that you are baking in your head that would shed some light on this topic?
Oh, let's see, Stephen. Nothing is immediately coming to mind. Mentoring, mentees, balancing people constantly disagreeing with each other. Don't be afraid to fire a mentor. You can fire them gracefully. Usually that's easy. Just you stop calling them and politely fobbing them off. If someone's a bad egg, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who has experience. Hopefully you're a part of a mentoring program where there's like, again, at VVM, the entrepreneurs could come to me if they had a concern about something, or to their sort of head mentor, the facilitator we used to call them. So they had someone they could turn to. So try to see if you can have someone like that. They can be like, gee, is this fishy or is it just creative? So have someone you can turn to help you suss out if something is a challenge, and then help you figure out how to get out of it. Sometimes they might even be willing to be the bad guy for you to get you out of the situation, which we always did for our entrepreneurs. So I think those are a couple of things that entrepreneurs should be looking at so that they can have the right people that they're working with. And never forget that the compensation that mentors want, the only kind of mentors you should really want, is gratitude. And gratitude is free. So you should pay lavishly. And that means, thank you cards at every occasion, virtual or otherwise. You should be specific. Hey, that particular piece of advice you gave me was really helpful in this impactful way. It will cost you moments of your time, and it will pay the mentor and the only thing that they really care about. It will let them know that you're a great mentee. And then when they're deciding if they're going to work at 6 o'clock at night to take a phone call from you when they probably should do something else, the entrepreneurs they're going to prioritize are the ones who listen to advice and express gratitude for having received the help.
Well, I can't thank you enough. This has been very helpful, and I'm sure your words of wisdom will move from Western Massachusetts to the depths of Macedonia, who are looking to be better at what they're doing. So thank you very much, and I appreciate your time and insights.
Always a joy to be with you, Stephen.